I caught my son partying with women in the car I bought him, while his wife was dying alone in the ICU. What I did next destroyed everything he thought he owned. Stay until the end, you won't believe how this ends. Welcome back to Maee's Stories, where we share powerful true life tales that touch the heart and challenge the soul. Before we dive into today's story, I have a small request. Please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps these important stories reach more people who need to hear them. And I'd love to know, drop a comment telling me which city or state you're watching from. It means the world to know how far our community reaches. Now, get comfortable. Today's story is about a mother who faced an impossible choice between her son and what was right. This is a journey of betrayal, justice, and redemption you won't forget. The airport bustled with activity, the rich aroma of roasted coffee mingling with the energy of travelers reuniting with loved ones. But unlike most mothers flying in to visit their children, I felt no joy. Instead, a heavy knot of anxiety twisted beneath my ribs. This feeling had compelled me, a woman who typically planned everything a month in advance, to drop everything, purchase a last-minute ticket, and fly halfway across the country without warning. In my tote bag rested 2 jars of homemade elderberry preserves, tart and healing, the kind my son Sterling loved as a child back in Chicago. Beside them lay a soft plush teddy bear, perhaps foolish, since my daughter-in-law Veda wasn't pregnant as far as I knew. But during our last conversation, her voice had sounded so fragile, so broken, that I wanted to bring her something warm and comforting. Stepping outside the terminal, I inhaled the thick, humid southern air, so different from Chicago's sharp northern winds. My phone remained silent in my coat pocket. I'd been calling Sterling for 3 days straight with no answer. Veda had also disappeared from contact a week ago. They say a mother's heart can sense danger. I always thought it was merely poetic until I felt that cold sting of fear myself. The Uber delivered me to their neighborhood in 40 minutes. Through the window, I saw the impressive historic brick building I'd purchased for them 3 years ago, right after their wedding. I'd wanted to give the young couple the head start I never had, so they'd never know what it meant to count pennies or live in cramped, damp quarters. I thought a foundation of brick and financial security would guarantee their happiness. How terribly wrong I was. Stepping off the elevator on the 3rd floor, I froze. The door stood ajar, not wide open, but enough to suggest someone had left in a hurry and forgotten to close it properly. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. Immediately, a stale, heavy stench assaulted my senses. This wasn't the warm smell of home or Veda's beloved peach cobbler. It reeked of stale tobacco smoke and something sour, like wine turned to vinegar. Sterling had sworn to me he'd quit smoking a year ago. "Mama, it's bad for you, and it's not cool anymore," he'd said with that charming smile that could always get anything from me. The kitchen told a disturbing story, a mountain of unwashed dishes, dried pizza crusts, empty bottles of expensive cognac, and a stack of unopened utility bills. But what terrified me most was a small box of medication, heart drops and blood pressure pills prescribed to Veda 6 months ago. The package was sealed, covered in dust. It hadn't been touched in a long time. "Who are you looking for?" a raspy voice croaked from behind me. I turned to find an elderly neighbor woman in a faded housecoat, looking at me with curiosity and pity. "I'm Sterling's mother," I said steadily, though inside everything was collapsing. "Where are they? Where's Veda?" The neighbor shook her head gravely. "Oh honey, I don't know where Sterling is, out running the streets somewhere. The music was booming here until morning 3 days ago. But Veda? The ambulance took her 2 or 3 days ago. They carried her out on a stretcher, unconscious. Thin as a shadow. Nobody's been back since." The world tilted. I don't remember leaving the building or hailing a cab. Only one thought pulsed through my mind: City General Hospital, the nearest trauma center. The ER waiting room reeked of bleach and crisis. I pushed through, demanding access to the admission list. Veda's married name, Jefferson, appeared in the ICU log. Dr. Du Bois met me, a tall man with exhausted eyes. "You're the mother?" he asked tersely. Mother-in-law. Where is she? What happened? Pneumonia, he stated clearly. Bilateral, advanced. But that's only half the problem. The body is severely malnourished. Extreme dehydration and dystrophy. It appears she hasn't eaten a proper meal in 2 weeks and suffered with a fever of 104 degrees for at least 5 days without any help. If the neighbors hadn't called 911 when they heard her fall, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Each word dropped into my soul like a stone into a well. Didn't eat. Didn't drink. Lay alone. Where was my son? Where was the husband who had vowed to be there in sickness and in health? Can I see her? For a minute. She's in a medically induced coma on a ventilator. I walked into the room. Veda lay entangled in tubes and wires, her face smaller than the pillow, her cheekbones so sharp they seemed ready to pierce through her skin. She'd always been petite, but now she looked transparent. This wasn't just illness. This was slow murder by indifference. I couldn't breathe. I needed air before I screamed. I nodded to the doctor and walked toward the exit, legs barely functioning. On the hospital steps, I stopped. The evening city was lighting up, cars rushing by, people hurrying about their business unaware that behind these walls, a young woman was dying. And then I saw him. Screeching tires. A massive SUV flew around the corner, the metallic midnight blue paint sparkling under the streetlights. This luxurious car, the safest in its class, I had given to Sterling just a month ago for his birthday. For the family, Mama, to drive the future kids around, he'd said. The windows were rolled down. Deafening club music poured from the cabin, rattling the hospital windows. Sterling was behind the wheel, laughing, head thrown back, shouting to his passengers, 2 young women shrieking with delight, leaning out the windows and waving at passers-by. He didn't glance at the hospital. He didn't turn toward the windows where his wife fought for every breath. He was the king of the world, the owner of an expensive toy I'd bought him. The car roared past and disappeared around the corner toward downtown's nightclub district. I stood there, stunned. The anger hadn't arrived yet, only icy numbness. My phone vibrated. A message from Sterling lit up the screen, the first in 3 days. Hey, Ma, can't talk. I'm at the hospital with Veda right now. It's really serious. The doctors are fighting. I haven't left her side. Pray for us. I stared at the glowing screen. Pray for us, he wrote. The man who just sped past his dying wife with loud music and strange women was asking me for prayers. In that moment, something inside me snapped with a loud crack. It wasn't the sound of a broken heart, it was the sound of patience snapping, the thread that had held my blind motherly love for years finally severing. I realized that before me wasn't just an immature boy confused about life. Before me was a monster calculating, cynical, and absolutely certain of his impunity. I didn't scream. I didn't call him to vent my rage or hear his pathetic excuses. Screaming is the weapon of the weak. I felt no pain, only clarity. A terrifying, crystal clarity I hadn't felt even during the hardest years of running my logistics business. I turned and walked back into the hospital. I sat in a hard chair in the corner of the waiting room. I needed 10 minutes to bury my son, the son I remembered with scraped knees, with his first clumsy Mother's Day drawing, with his promises to be my rock. That Sterling no longer existed. The picture came together in my mind. The car, that midnight blue Escalade. I bought it. I chose it. I paid for insurance. And thank God, I'd registered it in my name. Sterling had pouted about it, but I joked that insurance was cheaper for a senior citizen. Now that joke was my ace in the hole. He thought the car was an extension of his ego, but on paper, it was my property. I took out my phone and, without a muscle twitching in my face, dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Good evening. I want to report a stolen vehicle, I said clearly, making sure every word landed like a gavel. I provided all the details: make, model, license plate, location. The dispatcher asked if I knew the thief. I closed my eyes for a second. Veda's face, tangled in tubes, floated before me. No, I said. Or perhaps I told the truth. Was this person truly my son anymore? I suspect the driver is under the influence of alcohol. He was driving extremely aggressively, creating hazardous situations. There are passengers in the vehicle; their lives may be in danger. Copy that. An APB has been issued. Please hold. I hung up. My hand was absolutely steady. No tremors, no doubts. I just set the law on my own flesh and blood, and I didn't feel an ounce of regret. But that wasn't enough. The car was just metal. I needed to secure what truly mattered. I called Theodora, my old friend and the sharpest attorney in the city, a woman who didn't ask unnecessary questions when she heard steel in my voice. Ophelia, are you in town? Why didn't you call? Hello, Theodora. Listen carefully. I need you to draft some documents right now, tonight. What documents? Did something happen? I need a deed of gift for the condo where Sterling and Veda live. Transferring it to Sterling? You finally decided. No, I cut her off. Not to Sterling. To Veda. Silence hung on the line. Theodora had known me for 30 years. She knew how I doted on Sterling. Such a drastic change could only mean catastrophe. To Veda? She repeated slowly. Ophelia, are you sure? That property is worth a fortune. I have never been more sure. And prepare a general power of attorney in my name to handle all matters related to that property. I want the papers ready for signing tomorrow morning. I'll pay double your rate for the rush. I'll get it done. Come to my office at 8:00 a.m. 20 minutes passed. I imagined the patrol car with flashing lights pinning the blue SUV to the curb, the loud music dying, the smirk sliding off Sterling's face. My phone rang, an unknown local number. Ophelia Vance? Yes, speaking. This is Officer Bradshaw. We've detained a vehicle matching your description on Peachtree Street. Behind the wheel is Sterling Vance. He's behaving belligerently and resisting arrest. In the background, I heard commotion, my son's distorted shout, "You have no right. Call her. That's my mother. She'll explain everything." Miss Vance, the officer continued, the suspect claims he's your son and that you gave him the car. Is this true? If you confirm, we'll have to release him with just a citation for DUI. I took a deep breath, imagining Veda lying behind the wall, alone in the darkness of her coma while he partied. Officer, I said with no hesitation, my son Sterling is currently in the ICU of City General Hospital, sitting by his dying wife's bedside, holding her hand. He's praying for her health and hasn't left her side. The man you detained is a liar. I don't know who he is or why he's hiding behind my name. A second of silence. I understand, Miss Vance. We'll proceed with the full extent of the law. Grand theft auto, resisting arrest, fraud. Thank you, officer. Do your job. I pressed the button to end the call and looked at my reflection in the dark window glass. The woman looking back was a stranger, but I liked her. She was ready for war. The next 48 hours blurred into one endless gray day. I practically moved into the hospital, spoke with the chief of medicine, paid for a private room and round-the-clock nursing care. Money opened doors that remained closed to ordinary people. I sat by Veda's bed, holding her limp hand, talking about the weather, the beautiful autumn leaves back north, the sweet potato pies we'd bake when she got better. I filled the silence with words so death wouldn't dare enter. Sterling sat in a holding cell during this time. My phone periodically lit up with unknown numbers from the jail. He was using his phone call privilege, but he wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling me. I didn't answer. He left one voicemail. I listened to it in the hallway. Mama, where are you? Why aren't you answering? There's some crazy nonsense happening. The cops say you reported it stolen. Are you out of your mind? Bring the papers for the car fast and tell them you made a mistake. I'm sitting here with bums. I smell, Mama. Not a word about Veda. Not a question about her condition. Only me, mine. He was certain Veda was silent, loyally waiting at home like a dog, not daring to complain to her mother-in-law. He didn't know his silent victim was balancing on the edge of life and death. Between hospital shifts, I returned to the apartment to find Veda's ID for processing the private room transfer. In their bedroom dresser, under neatly folded linens, I found an old diary in a worn cover, a chronicle of survival. I opened it randomly. Veda's handwriting, usually round and neat, was small and erratic. March 12th, Sterling asked for money again. Said he needed it to maintain his status with business partners. I gave him the last $400 I'd saved for the dentist. My tooth hurts unbearably, but he said if he didn't have a new shirt, the deal would fall through and we'd be on the street. I flipped the page. April 20th, he screamed. Said the apartment is actually his, that his mother gave it to him and they just let me stay there. Said if I nag him about getting a job, he'll kick me out. I'm scared. I have nowhere to go. Mom's gone. Dad is far away. I have to endure it for the family. My vision darkened. He'd lied to her. He used my kindness as a weapon to beat this girl into submission, convincing her she was nobody, empty space in his kingdom. May 5th, he sold my gold ring, grandma's ring. Said he lost it, but I saw the pawn shop receipt in his pocket. With that money, he bought himself a watch. Said, you just sit at home anyway. You don't need jewelry, but I need to look presentable. I closed the notebook, hands trembling not from fear, but from concentrated rage. This wasn't just selfishness. This was financial and psychological terrorism. He was systematically destroying her to elevate himself. I took the notebook with me. It was evidence not for court, but for my conscience, so that when he came to me with beaten dog eyes, I wouldn't waver. Returning to the hospital, I sat at my post again. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor became my only music. I took Veda's hand. You are not alone, baby girl, I whispered. Do you hear me? You're not alone anymore. I'm here, and I know everything. He won't hurt you again. I promise. Hours passed. Outside the window, the sky began turning gray. Morning of the third day approached. I dozed off in the chair, head dropped on my chest. Suddenly, I felt a faint movement, like a butterfly wing brushing my palm. I snapped my eyes open. Veda's fingers twitched slightly in my hand. I froze, afraid to scare away the moment. Her eyelids fluttered, lifting slowly like a heavy curtain. Her gaze was cloudy, unfocused, looking through me, through the ceiling, into the void. Then her eyes cleared slightly and she saw me. There was no recognition, only fear. Primal, deep-seated fear. Her lips moved under the mask. I leaned close to hear. Don't let him in, her voice rustled, quiet as dry leaves. Don't let him in. Who, honey? Who shouldn't I let in? She squeezed my hand with unexpected strength, terror splashing in her eyes. Sterling, she breathed out, and a tear rolled down her temple. He turned off the heat. Said it was expensive. I'm cold. Don't let him in. The monitors beeped more urgently. Her pulse spiked. The nurse rushed in with a syringe. Shoo, Veda, calm down. I stroked her head, feeling a wave of cold, murderous resolve rising inside me. No one will touch you. Sleep. He turned off the heat in winter in an apartment where his sick wife lay just to save a few dollars that he immediately spent on gas for his toy car and cocktails for strangers. He was freezing her alive. I walked out of the room, my face transformed into a stone mask. There was no longer a mother. There was a judge. And the verdict had already been passed final and without appeal. I stepped into the morning fog, feeling every step resonate. But there was no fatigue. Liquid nitrogen flowed through my veins instead of blood. An Uber took me to Theodora's office in 20 minutes. The city was just waking up, unaware that someone's world was collapsing. Theodora was waiting at 8:00 a.m. Her office smelled of expensive coffee and old paper, the smell of stability and law. "You look terrible, Ophelia," she said, observing my rumpled coat and dark circles. "But your eyes are burning in a way that scares me." "Let's get to business, Theodora. Are the papers ready?" She silently slid a folder toward me. "Deed of gift for the condo in Veda Jefferson's name. Everything as you requested. But before you sign, I have to show you something." Theodora pulled another folder from the safe, a thin blue one. "Yesterday, when I was pulling the title abstract, I discovered an interesting inquiry. Sterling applied to a payday loan company a week ago, a very shady one. As collateral, he provided copies of documents for this very apartment." "And?" I asked, feeling a new spring tighten inside. "As collateral for the loan, he provided a power of attorney allegedly from you, giving him the right to mortgage the property." She opened the folder and showed me a photocopy. I looked at my signature. It was almost perfect. Almost. Only the tail of the O was slightly longer than I usually write. "It's a forgery," I stated calmly. "Crude, but sufficient for thugs." Theodora nodded. He was planning to borrow a huge sum. If he couldn't repay, and he wouldn't have, judging by his credit history, some dangerous people would have come demanding you vacate the premises. He planned to sell the roof over his wife's and mother's heads to cover gambling debts. "Where's the pen?" I asked. Theodora handed me a heavy Parker pen. I signed the deed with a sweeping hand, 3 copies. With every stroke, I cut off a piece of the past where my beloved son Sterling existed. Now there was only Sterling Vance, fraudster and sadist. "Send it for registration immediately, electronically, so the apartment is hers within an hour." "We'll do it." Leaving the notary, I called the dealership where I'd purchased that cursed SUV. The manager practically bowed over the phone upon recognizing my voice. "Alex, listen carefully. The car I bought last month is currently at the police impound. As the owner, I'm authorizing you to pick it up with a tow truck. I'm sending the documents via courier right now." "Of course, Miss Vance. Where should we deliver the vehicle?" "To service?" "No. To the trade-in department. I want to sell it immediately." "Sell it?" Genuine surprise rang in the manager's voice. "But it's brand new. You'll take a loss." "I don't care about the loss. Sell it today for whatever price the wholesalers offer. Main condition, the money must not be transferred to my account. I'll send you details for the hospital's charity fund. Purpose of payment, treatment and rehabilitation of Veda Jefferson." "I understand. We'll get it done." I hung up. Now Sterling had nothing. No wheels, no housing, no mother's purse. I'd scorched the earth around him, leaving him naked on the ashes. My phone pinged. A notification from the bank: the state filing fee had been paid. The apartment was going to Veda. I returned to the hospital to give the doctors a copy of the payment receipt. The money from the car sale would arrive by evening, but I wanted them to know resources existed, spare nothing. As I was leaving the chief physician's office, my phone rang. This time it wasn't Sterling, it was an unknown woman. "Hello, is this Sterling's mother?" The voice was squeaky, young, and entitled. "Who is this?" I asked in an icy tone. "This is Candy. I was with Sterling in the car when those pigs arrested us." "Listen, lady, your son told me the car was his, that he's a big businessman. Now the cops are telling me it was stolen. Are you running a family of con artists?" I chuckled. "Candy," I said softly, almost sweetly, "Sterling lied to you. He has no car. He has no business. He has no apartment either. He lives off a librarian wife and a retired mother." "What?" The phone squealed. "But he promised me a trip to Miami." "I'm afraid the only trip he's going on is a bus ride to the unemployment office." I hung up. Immediately, another message arrived from Sterling. "Mama, they released me. It was hell. I'm coming home. We need to talk seriously. You owe me an explanation for this circus." He was going home to an apartment that no longer belonged to him. To a wife he'd almost killed. He still thought he was master of the situation. I checked my watch. 2 hours had passed since I gave the order to the dealer. Sterling's phone must have been vibrating with messages. I imagined him standing on the police station steps, dirty and angry, reading the message Candy had just sent. I didn't see it, but I knew what happened. Candy, judging by her voice, wasn't a girl who forgave shattered dreams of Miami. Indeed, a minute later, Theodora sent me a screenshot. She was monitoring Sterling's social media. A post appeared on his wall from user Queen Candy. "Yo ladies, don't fall for this loser Sterling Vance. The car is his mama's. Bro is broke and his own mom called the cops on him. Embarrassing. Don't call me again, loser." I put the phone away. Checkmate. I positioned myself in the hospital lobby, right across from the elevators. In my hands was a book, a volume of Baldwin I'd grabbed from Veda's house, but the lines jumped before my eyes. I wasn't reading. I was waiting. About 40 minutes passed before the elevator doors slid open and he stepped out. Sterling looked pathetic. His designer shirt was wrinkled and stained brown. His hair stood on end, dark shadows lay under his eyes. He was limping on his left leg, probably from a warm welcome from cellmates or police during the arrest. But even in this state, he tried to carry himself with pride. He looked around, not for a doctor, not for his wife, but for me. Seeing me in the chair, he headed straight toward me, his face twisted into a grimace meant to portray righteous anger but looking more like a spoiled child's tantrum. "Finally!" He barked across the corridor, startling a dozing nurse. "Mama, what did you do? Do you realize what you've done? They kept me in the tank for 2 days with bums." He loomed over me, expecting me to jump up as usual, start gasping, apologizing, shoving money at him. But I didn't move. I slowly closed the book, placed it on my knees, and raised my eyes to him. My gaze was dry and calm as a desert. "Hello, Sterling," I said quietly. "You smell. Go take a shower before you shout." He was taken aback, his mouth opening like a fish thrown on shore. "Smell?" he squealed, lowering his voice only because a doctor walked by. "Mama, are you out of your mind? You reported me to the police. You said I stole the car, my car. You embarrassed me in front of my friends, in front of Candy. Do you know what she wrote to me?" "I know," I nodded. "She wrote the truth. You're a loser, Sterling." The word hit him harder than a slap. He recoiled, his face breaking out in red blotches. "How dare you?" He choked with indignation. "I'm going to Veda right now. She'll confirm I took the car with her consent." She'll tell them, and you'll regret treating me like this. Where are the keys? Give me the keys to the car. I have to go. I have business. You have no business, Sterling, I spoke measuredly, like driving nails. And you have no car. What do you mean, no car? He laughed nervously. Did you hide it? Come on, Ma. Lesson learned. Give me the keys. I really need to go. I promised the guys. The car is sold, I interrupted him. An hour ago, the dealer picked it up from impound. The money has already been transferred to the clinic's account. What? His eyes bugged out. You had no right. That was my gift. That was my property. On paper. I disposed of it as I saw fit. The money will go to pull your wife back from the dead from the grave you drove her into. He froze. For the first time, not anger but fear flickered in his eyes. But it wasn't fear for Veda, it was the fear of a cornered beast stripped of its fangs. You're lying, he wheezed. You couldn't. You love me. I'm your son. I loved you, I agreed, and it was true, bitter as wormwood. But I will no longer enable you. You're a grown man, Sterling. 35 years old. You have no job. You have no car. And by the way, I paused, savoring the moment of truth, you have no home. What do you mean? He paled so much the blotches on his face stood out even brighter. The apartment, the condo, now belongs to Veda. Officially. I signed the deed of gift this morning. You are no longer the master there. You're not even on the lease. He stood swaying as if the floor was moving under his feet. All his arrogance, all his fake bravado fell away like husks. All that remained was a small, scared, greedy little man. You couldn't, he muttered. You're bluffing. You just want to scare me. I'm going to Veda right now. She loves me. She'll cancel it. She'll sign whatever I say. He spun around and darted toward the ICU doors. Veda! He screamed, throwing the door open. Veda, tell her. I didn't even stand up. I knew what would happen next. Sterling only managed 2 steps into the room before a figure emerged from behind the privacy screen, a man in the uniform of a private security firm, broad-shouldered with a stone face. I'd hired him 2 hours ago with a single instruction: protect the patient from any male visitors except medical staff. The guard silently blocked Sterling's path, his hand the size of a shovel landing on my son's chest. Unauthorized entry prohibited, he rumbled in a bass voice. Get your hands off me. Sterling squealed, trying to get around the mountain of muscle. I'm the husband. I have rights. Veda! Veda, wake up! Veda lay motionless, but the heart monitor reacted to the shout. The pulse curve jerked upward. You are disturbing a critical patient, the guard said, gently but firmly pushing Sterling back into the corridor. Leave, or I will be forced to use physical force. Sterling resisted, his boots sliding on the linoleum. Mama! He yelled, turning back to me. Tell him she's my wife. I sat motionless, gripping the book. Take him away, I said quietly. The guard heard. Sterling was shoved into the corridor. The ward door slammed in his face, cutting him off from the victim he'd considered his property. He stood in the empty hallway, disheveled, humiliated, stripped of all his toys. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw hatred, pure, unclouded hatred. In that moment, I realized the war had just begun. He wouldn't retreat easily. He would play for pity. He would crawl. He would lie. And he started right then. His face changed. The mask of anger was replaced by a mask of suffering. He sniffled and took a step toward me. Mama! His voice trembled, becoming pitiful, like in childhood when he broke a vase. Ma, I'm sorry. I'm a fool. I got confused. Help me. They're going to kill me. I knew who he meant, the people he'd promised money from selling the apartment. But nothing stirred in me except disgust. Let's go outside, I said, standing up. There are sick people here. We'll talk where you won't disturb them. We walked into a long hospital corridor away from the nurse's station and Veda's room. It was empty except for a flickering fluorescent light making an unpleasant buzzing sound. Sterling scurried after me like a beaten dog, but I could feel his tension. He was still looking for a loophole, calculating options. I stopped by a window overlooking the parking lot where his blue SUV once stood. Now there was only an empty space. I turned to him. Well, I'm listening. Sterling looked around to ensure there were no witnesses, then collapsed to his knees. It was so theatrical, so rehearsed, I felt nauseous. He grabbed the hem of my coat with dirty fingers, looking up into my eyes. Mommy, forgive me, he wailed, tears flowing down his cheeks, real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't mean to. I'll fix everything. I swear I'll never drive drunk again. I'll find a job. Just put everything back how it was. Give the apartment back. He sobbed, wiping his nose on his sleeve. You don't understand, Ma. I have problems. Serious problems. I owe money, a lot of money. If I don't pay, they won't just beat me up. They'll kill me. Mama, I'm your son. Your blood. Would you let them kill me? He spoke fast, choking on words, trying to crush me with pity, fear, guilt. And those girls in the car, he continued, seeing my silence, just colleagues. We were coming from a corporate party. I was giving them a ride. I love Veda. I can't live without her. I sat here, prayed. Mama, believe me. I looked down at him, at his shaking hands, at his pathetic posture, and I didn't see a son. I saw a parasite that had been sucking the life out of us for years. Stand up, I said quietly. I won't stand up until you forgive me. He howled louder, hoping some staff member would see the scene of the prodigal son's repentance. Mama, I'll do anything for you. I'll take care of Veda. I'll carry her in my arms. Just don't abandon me. Don't take my home. Stand up. My voice whipped him like a slap. He flinched and slowly rose, still sniffling. You say you're my blood? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. Yes, that's true. And it's my greatest shame, my most terrible mistake. I raised you. I gave you everything. But I didn't teach you to be a human being. I opened my bag and took out a folded sheet of paper, a copy of the deed with the registrar's stamp that Theodora had forwarded. Look. I unfolded the paper in front of his face. See this stamp? The apartment is no longer yours and never will be. It belongs to Veda. Solely. Sterling stared at the document, his eyes darting across the lines, pupils dilated. But. What if? If she. He didn't finish, but I understood. If she dies. That's what he was thinking. If Veda dies, he as the legal husband inherits everything. He was already burying her in his thoughts and calculating the profit. Thinking about inheritance? I asked, my voice so cold the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in the corridor. Don't get your hopes up. I took out a second document, my will, rewritten that morning at Theodora's office. Read. I pointed at the highlighted paragraph. Sterling read aloud, stumbling, all my property, movable and immovable, as well as funds and accounts, I bequeath to the Hope for Paws Animal Shelter. He looked up at me, full of genuine horror. You're joking. Cats? Mama, are you crazy? You're giving everything to cats and leaving your own son on the street? Yes, I answered calmly. Cats are at least grateful when you feed them, and they don't turn off the heating on the sick. You wouldn't dare! He screamed, forgetting the role of repentant sinner. His face twisted with malice. I'll contest this. I'll prove you're incompetent, that you're a senile old woman. The court will be on my side. I'm the only heir. Try it, I smirked. I have a certificate from a psychiatrist obtained today. I'm of sound mind and memory. But you have problems. What problems? He sprayed saliva. Locks, I said simply. Tonight, the apartment will have new locks and a security system. If you try to enter without Veda's invitation, and I'm sure she won't invite you, a squad will arrive. This time they won't let you out in 2 days. Sterling froze, realizing the scale of the disaster. No home. No car. No money. No future inheritance. And the debts. He whispered, and in that whisper was real terror. Mama, they'll kill me. They really will. Give me at least money to cover the debt. I'll leave. I'll disappear. You won't see me again. Just give me money. No, I cut him off. You're a big boy, Sterling. You brewed this tea. Now drink it. Go work as a loader, a janitor, a cab driver. Oh wait, you'll lose your license. That means a foot courier. Work it off. You monster. He spat in my face. You're not a mother. You're a viper. I hate you. I hope you die with your Veda. Feeling is mutual, son, I said, putting the documents back in my bag. Now leave. Security is coming. At the end of the hall, 2 guards appeared, likely called by someone disturbed by the noise. Sterling looked at them, then at me. Panic darted in his eyes. This isn't over. He shouted, backing away. You'll regret this. I'll find a way. The apartment is mine. Mine! He turned and ran to the stairs, nearly knocking over a nurse with a tray. I watched him go. I didn't pity him. I pitied the time, the strength, and the love I'd wasted growing this weed. But it was too early to relax. He was cornered, and rats in a corner jump at the throat. Sterling didn't run away. He ran to the apartment. I knew it. He would try to get in before the locks were changed, carry out everything, valuable appliances, Veda's jewelry, maybe even furniture. I took out my phone and dialed Theodora. Theodora, he's on his way. Are the locksmiths there? They're working, Ophelia. Police are here too. I asked an officer to supervise the process. Showed him the property deeds. Good. He's running there. He's furious. Don't worry, Theodora's voice was calm. We'll meet him. I hung up and returned to the nurse's station. I needed to ensure Veda was okay after this visit, but a new feeling was already maturing inside me, a feeling of liberation. I'd cut off a rotten branch. Now the tree would breathe easier. As I predicted, Sterling raced to the apartment. Theodora told me everything in detail later. He flew into the lobby, skipping steps, ignoring the elevator. One thought pounded in his head: make it in time. Make it in time. He reached the 3rd floor, already pulling out his keyring, but froze. The door was wide open. 2 workers in overalls stood in the hallway, one drilling out the old lock cylinder, the second unpacking a box with a new expensive alarm system. Standing next to them, arms crossed, was Theodora, unshakable as a rock. And leaning against the wall were two police officers, looking bored. The very same ones who'd processed his arrest. Fate has a peculiar sense of humor. "What is going on here?" Sterling yelled, bursting into the hallway. "Get out! This is my apartment. I'm the owner." The worker with the drill didn't even turn around, continuing to buzz. Theodora slowly raised her eyes over her glasses. "Citizen Vance, leave the premises. You no longer reside here." "Who are you?" he shrieked, trying to squeeze past her. "I'm registered here. I live here. My mother bought this." "Your mother bought it, and your mother gifted this apartment to Miss Veda Jefferson." Theodora replied calmly, pulling a fresh extract from the folder. "Here is the document. Owner, Veda Jefferson. And here's a certificate from the records office. You were deregistered this morning at the owner's request based on loss of right of use." "Deregistered? Without me? That's illegal. I'll file a complaint." He tried to dash into the bedroom, apparently hoping to get to the safe, but one of the officers blocked his path. "Citizen, hold it," the sergeant said lazily but authoritatively. "You were told in plain English this is someone else's property. You are nobody here." "Do you know who I am?" Sterling switched to his favorite but now useless ace. "I have connections. I'm making a call right now." He feverishly pulled out his phone and started poking at the screen. Theodora and the police silently watched this spectacle. "Hello, Donnie? Bro, help me out. It's total lawlessness here. My mom went crazy. Cops are pressing me. Hello? Hello?" Money apparently hung up or blocked him after news about the car theft. Sterling dialed another number. "Sergio? Sergio, it's Sterling. Need guys urgently. Pull up to the crib." "What do you mean you can't? What do you mean you heard?" "That's all lies, Sergio." He lowered the phone. No one wanted to stick their neck out for a loser who no longer had a rich mommy behind him. His friends were friends of his money and his car. Without them, he was empty space. "Leave, Sterling," Theodora said, a note of fatigue in her voice. "Don't make it worse. There's nothing for you here." "My stuff," he howled. "My stuff is in there. Clothes, computer. I have the right to take my stuff." "Your things are packed." Theodora signaled the worker, who brought out a large gym bag and a couple of black trash bags stuffed with something soft. "Here, clothes, shoes, hygiene products. The laptop stays. It was bought on credit in Veda's name, and the credit isn't paid off. So that's her property. The TV too. And the gaming console." The worker threw the bag in sacks at Sterling's feet. "Take them and go." Sterling stood looking at these pathetic bundles. His whole life fit into 2 trash bags. You'll regret this," he hissed. "You'll all regret this. I won't leave it like this." "Citizen, exit," the officer said, placing a hand on his holster. The gesture was unambiguous. Sterling grabbed the bag, kicked one of the sacks, and, cursing through his teeth, tumbled out onto the stairwell. The door slammed shut behind him. The new lock clicked. That sound was the final period. He went down to the street. It was evening. A cold wind chased fallen leaves across the asphalt. Sterling stood by the entrance where yesterday he'd parked his luxury car, not knowing where to go. Couldn't go to the girls, they'd dumped him. Couldn't go to friends, no money for rent. He looked up at the windows on the 3rd floor where a warm, cozy light glowed now unreachable. He realized he'd been erased, not just kicked out, but erased like a dirty stain. With trembling hands, he took out his wallet. Inside lay a gold card linked to my account, which he loved to flash in restaurants. Hotel, he thought. I'll get a room at the plaza, sleep it off, come up with something in the morning. Mom will cool down. She always cools down. He dragged his bundles to the nearest ATM glowing in the window of a 24-hour store. He inserted the card, entered the PIN, requested the balance. The ATM whirred and swallowed the plastic. Sterling stared blankly at the black slot where his last hope had disappeared. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Give it back. He punched the screen. Give back the card. Passers-by shied away from him. A man with a dog stopped and threatened to call the police. Sterling slid down the wall of the store onto the dirty concrete. He sat surrounded by his trash bags, without a dime in his pocket, without a phone. The battery had died on the last call. At that moment, sitting in the hospital, I received a notification from the bank, attempted use of blocked supplementary. I put the phone down and looked at Veda. She was sleeping, breathing more evenly. The machines beeped rhythmically and calmly. The worst was over for her. But for Sterling, the real hell was just beginning, a hell he built himself, brick by brick, lie by lie. 6 months passed. Autumn came into its own, painting the city in gold and crimson. But this cold was different, clean, invigorating, promising not death but rest before new rebirth. I sat on the balcony of that same apartment. Now it didn't smell of dampness and tobacco, but of freshly brewed tea with thyme and oil paints. Veda sat opposite me, wrapped in a fluffy blanket the color of baked milk. She was still thin, her movements sometimes showing the caution of someone who'd survived a long illness. But there was no longer that hunted emptiness in her eyes. Life shone there. She was painting a watercolor landscape blooming on the easel, the view from our window of the old park. You know, Mom, she said, dipping her brush into water. She'd started calling me Mom a month ago, and every time that word warmed my soul. I found a job at the Central Library. They opened a rare books department and need a restorer. The pay isn't huge, but it's enough for me, and the schedule is peaceful. That's wonderful, darling, I smiled, sipping my tea. But don't worry about money. You know we have a cushion. I know. She put down the brush and looked at me seriously. But I want to do it myself. I want to feel that I can. After all this, it's important for me to know I'm not helpless. You are the strongest girl I know, I said, covering her hand with mine. We didn't talk about Sterling. His name became taboo, as if pronouncing it could summon an evil spirit back into our world. But his shadow had vanished from this apartment along with the old wallpaper we'd replaced in the first months. The walls were now a warm peach, the furniture light. We'd scrubbed out even the memory of him. I'd sold my business up north. The logistics company I'd given half my life to was now in reliable hands of my deputies, and I'd received freedom and the means to simply live. I bought myself a small studio in the building next door to be close to Veda but not interfere with her building a new life. We became a family, a strange, broken, but real family, bound not by blood but by scars. I'm going for a walk before the sun goes down, I said, standing up. Should I buy those cinnamon buns you like? Yes, please, Veda smiled. And grab some milk. I walked out onto the street. The air was crisp and ringing. I walked down the familiar avenue, enjoying simple things: the rustle of leaves underfoot, the laughter of children on the playground, the feeling of peace I hadn't known for many years. My path took me past a car wash on the corner. Usually I didn't pay attention to the hustle there, but today my gaze snagged on a familiar silhouette. At the base stood a huge black Jeep covered in soapy foam, and bustling around it with a rag was a man in a soaked-through gray jumpsuit. He was thin, stooped, with a wind-burnt face etched with deep wrinkles. He scrubbed the fender with a kind of frenzy, afraid to miss a spot. It was sterling. I slowed my pace but didn't stop. He felt the gaze and raised his head. For a second, time froze. We looked at each other across the strip of road, the abyss of betrayal separating us. In his eyes, I expected to see anger, pleading, maybe shame. But there was only fatigue, infinite, dull fatigue of a man fighting every day for a piece of bread. His hands, once manicured and used to holding only a glass or steering wheel, were red from cold water and chemicals. He took a half step forward, his lips trembling as if he wanted to shout something. "Mama, help. Forgive." I didn't give him that chance. I didn't turn away. I didn't speed up. I just slid my gaze over him, like sliding over a lamppost or random passerby, and walked on. My face remained calm. Nothing trembled inside. No pity, no gloating, just fact. Everyone gets what they deserve. He'd wanted to live beautifully without working. Now he worked dirty to survive. The balance was restored. I walked another block, feeling his gaze on my back. He didn't run after me. Apparently life had taught him something after all. "Ma, please, I can't take it anymore. I understand everything. Give me a chance. Even just $10 for food, please." I looked at these lines. Ma, a word that was once the most precious to me, now just a set of letters. Chance, I'd given him hundreds of chances. All his life I'd given him chances, and he'd spent them all on killing faith in himself. My finger hovered over the reply button. What could I write? Endure it. God will provide? No. I tapped the settings icon. The screen blinked and cleared. The last thread connecting me to the past snapped. I put the phone in my pocket, inhaled the autumn air deeply, and smiled. Ahead was the bakery where they baked the most delicious cinnamon rolls for my daughter. My real daughter. I picked up my pace. I was expected at home. That's the story, dear listeners, a story about love that can be blind, and about an epiphany that sometimes costs too much. A story about how one woman found the strength to cut off her own flesh to save a stranger's life that became family. Now I want to ask you, was Ophelia right? Did she act cruelly toward her only son? After all, they say a mother's heart should forgive everything. Or is there a line beyond which forgiveness becomes an accessory to a crime? Many will say, that's her son. She should have helped, treated him, sent him to rehab but not to the street. Others will argue, a grown man must answer for his actions. Stop babysitting. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please consider sending a super thanks. It helps me continue bringing you powerful stories like this one. Your support means everything. Tell me, which city or state are you listening from? I'd love to know where my stories are reaching. On screen, you'll see recommendations for 2 more incredible life stories I think you'll love. There's so much more content waiting for you on Maee's Stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, this is Maee's Stories, where every story matters. With love and respect, see you in the next one.